Hey guys, it's Katie here, and I am going to show you how I work the pinhole cast on, or as some people refer to it as the disappearing loop cast on. This can be done with a number of methods. You can use double pointed, you can use one circular, you could use a crochet hook, number of ways. I prefer to use one circular to work my cast on. Then I split it between two circulars to split my work in half. Work one half over one needle, the other half over the other needle. That to me is the method that clicked, finally got me to fully understand the beauty of this cast on. And it's what I prefer to use. Now, you may see the pinhole cast on used over circular items such as socks, hats, things that you find in a cone, not a cone shape, but over the top of a sphere shape. You can also use them working in the round increasing over a flat object. This was my cast on of choice for my tiny town wrap. I started in the very center over a tiny little pinhole cast on. Worked over two separate needles, one in one direction, the other in the other direction. That's what works for me. Also, at the end of it, I'm going to show you a cheat code method. If none of these work for you, if you find double pointed, too fiddly, the crochet hook, you just can't get the rhythm down. Crochet hook completely boggles my mind. This is just a straight up way to work it, the cheat way. All you need to know is a traditional long tail cast on. You have one circular needle to start. You will split it over two. After you cast them on, you will need a darning needle then. Thread your tail through and cinch it closed. No one will ever know. So one of the beauties of knitting is whatever method works best for you, that's what you get to use. So I'm going to show you the way I do things, and maybe it'll make sense to you, maybe it'll make something click, and if it doesn't, I've got the cheat way. Now to work our pinhole or disappearing loop cast on, we need our yarn, and we're going to eventually use two circular needles. To cast on, we're only going to use one. So, grab your yarn. Don't need a long tail. I leave about 12 to 14 inches as my tail. Take your yarn. This is the piece that's attached to your working yarn. The setup, have your hand flat. Going to run the yarn. Again, this is my working yarn. Tail end comes over the top of my hand. Then you're going to separate out your pointer finger and your middle finger. Keep those close together. Wrap your tail end over the top. You can take your ring finger and your pinky to secure your working yarn. Again, working yarn down here, tail on top of here. And you don't need much. Typically these cast-ons are only worked over a few stitches, but make sure you have plenty to weave in later. Now you're going to take your needle. We are going to come from the top through this strand. And you are going to insert your needle down and twist a loop as if to backwards loop cast on one stitch. Then you're going to want to put your finger on this stitch. We're going to bring the tip of our needle behind these two strands, and we're going to scoop up that tail end and bring them up. We now have two stitches. Now every stitch after this is just going to be a repeat of that same motion. Scoop up from below, then come behind and scoop up that tail again. We're going to scoop up our working yarn, come behind our 2 strands, scoop it back up and forward. Scoop up, come behind, scoop that same strand, and now you have your stitches casted on. I'm just going to use 8 for this, just so we have an even number and it's not too many. When you're all finished, take your tail, and if you've done this correctly, you can pull it and it will cinch the extra yarn closed. Here's my tail, I cinched. Here's my working yarn. Now here's where I like to set myself up to work over 2 separate needles. What I'm going to do is I am going to turn my work to get started. Make sure you're not working with your tail and you're working with your working yarn. I'm going to grab my second circular needle and I'm going to knit the first half of my stitches. Now, this is my second needle. This is still my first. Now that I've knit the first half of my stitches, I'm going to move these to the cable. And I'm going to pick up the opposite end of my cast on needle. So the cable you see here is my second needle. This is part of my cast on needle, which was my first needle. Here's the other end. I'm going to grab him and then I'm just going to knit these 4. You can tighten your tail back up, but now I have 4 stitches across one circular, 4 stitches across another. Then all I'm going to be doing is continuing to turn my work across this row, drop that needle, turn my work across this row, drop that needle, and so on and so forth. Now after the first couple of rows, you're going to want to tighten up that center with your tail. And as you can see, it's nice and tight because that disappearing loop makes it completely disappear and cinch up. Now, if you cannot get the hang of the disappearing loop cast on, pinhole cast on, whatever name you want it to go by, just can't get a hold of it, that is totally fine. There is another way. The cheat code method, you're going to need 1 extra material, and that is a darning needle. We're going to use 1 needle. We are just going to perform a traditional long tail cast on. Cast on your required number of stitches. For me, that's 8. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 stitches using a long tail cast on. Now what I'm going to do, slide them to the opposite needle. Still pick up my second circular needle. Isolate your tail so you don't begin using that. And I am just going to work these first 4 stitches. I'm going to work those first 4 stitches across my new needle. Drop it just like I did before. Pick up the second half of my original cast on needle. Work the next 4. So now I have 4 stitches on each needle. Now, the trick with this one, you're going to take your tail, and we are going to thread it through our darning needle. Okay, we have our tail threaded on our darning needle. Now, it's coming out from up here. So you're going to want to start down here. You're going to want to start opposite. Now be careful when you do this. You don't want to splice your stitches. So it can be helpful to move them all to your cable. My tail's coming out from over here, so I'm going to start over here. Thread your needle through each of your stitches, making sure you don't splice them. I'm going to pull that through. Then you're going to turn. You're going to come back and you're going to do it to your last 4. Now you can pull it to make your loop disappear. Just like we worked with our disappearing or pinhole loop cast on, but we just did a long tail, joined in the round, dispersed it off over 2 needles, and then threaded our tail through. Cinched it tight, and you're good to go. That's all you need to do. So if you can't get a hold, if you can't get the hang of the pinhole cast on or the disappearing loop cast on, you can just long tail cast on, thread your tail through, and pull it tight. Once you work your entire project, you will never have any idea which exact cast on you used. Just be sure either method you use after each of the first few rows that you tighten your center. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial on the pinhole or disappearing loop cast on. And if that didn't jive with you, there's always the cheat way, and nobody will ever know. So I hope that I could help you along your little journey. I am the Katie behind Katie DeGroff Knits and host of the Katie Knits podcast. Please take a moment to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it and you found it helpful. And you can also hit that little bell and turn on notifications so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. So in the meantime, happy knitting, everybody.